Despite eating 3 meals a day, my doctor told me I was malnourished. In this episode, I'm going to cover how I even got to that point, what were some of my habits, and what I did about it. So let's get started. I'll give you the context. I was living in New York City in my 20s. This was right out of college. I got laid off in my job in California working for this big real estate company. And I loved it. I was actually there on an internship. I got promoted to work full-time, but what ended up happening was 80% of my office got laid off, and this was in 2008. So I ended up back home, not knowing what to do, and I did something cheeky, a picture of myself on a resume and sending it over via fax to the hotel. The manager at the time, a woman, she picked up the resume and called me the same day. And I think she might even said, you're not supposed to put a picture of yourself on a resume, or someone at work told me that. But I was desperate. I needed a job. I got hired. And a couple of weeks later, they relocated me for a few weeks to another location, 6 blocks down, which was right next to the Harvard Club. And I walked in because I thought it was just interesting, and I would just walk around. It was on 46th Street in Midtown Manhattan, all these private clubs. And I would walk in and out and just look at people. And one of the workers there would go to my hotel location because apparently he had a second job at my hotel location. And I told him where I was from, Czech Republic. He said, well, my boss actually is Czech, so why don't you come in? We're looking for co-Czech girls. I had to look it up. I was like, what is a co-Czech girl? It's literally a service worker who, I was going to say servant, a service worker who checks coats, meaning that they stand in a room and they take people's coats, put it on a hanger, and put it on this central line, and then you press the button, and then it kind of like the coats goes around, and you pick the right number, and then you give that number to the person. And then after they're done being in the club, they give you the number, and you match it with the number that's on the hanger of the coat, and you give them back the coat. That was job number 2. Job number 3 was working as a shot girl in New York City at a bar, which meant that after my shift, I would go for a few hours and sell shots. But how my day was structured is that I would start from 7 a.m. to 3 or 8 a.m. to 4. Then I would run to the Harvard Club. I would then check coats till about 11 o'clock at night. And at midnight, I would start my shift at the restaurant and handing off shots. So if I drank the shot with the customers, they would give me more tips. So that wasn't the best idea. However, I did that for a few times, usually on the weekends. And having this crazy schedule didn't give me enough time to really eat or eat well or eat enough, because I would just work, eat something very quickly, usually a salad, maybe a piece of fish, maybe I would have a granola bar. And I did this for a few months. Now, one day I was in the coat room and I had this massive allergic reaction to what later I found out was dust. I have a lot of environmental allergies from dust mites and pollen, and I've developed all of those allergies while working at this coat room, which probably was poorly ventilated. And my eyes would just blow up. They were really swollen. And I said, okay, I'm just going to manage that because I need the money. One of the workers there, this wonderful woman from Ireland, she told me, you need to go see a doctor. But I had no time because I was working. She recommended that I go see a doctor who basically gave me steroid injections into my eyelid. She did mention you should go see a doctor. A few months later, I went to get a checkup. And this was crazy what I found out. My doctor told me that I was malnourished. I didn't even know what that meant. I mean, I worked at the United Nations one summer, and World Food Program to be exact. Did read up on starving children in Africa and worked on the communication campaigns, posting billboards of starving children that were malnourished and hanging those billboards on buildings. That was a cool internship. But I had no idea malnourishment, what that means. I'm actually going to go over some of the results and how I found out how the doctor kind of made that conclusion that I was malnourished. I'm actually going to pull it up here. I had low hemoglobin and hematocrit levels, which indicates they're indicative of anemia. So possible deficiencies in iron, vitamin B12, or folate. I was deficient in iron. Then there were low levels of vitamins and minerals, deficiencies in vitamin D, B12, calcium, and magnesium. I was deficient in B12 as well as magnesium. By the way, side note on magnesium. Magnesium is really great when you have headaches. Just FYI tip, something I learned a few years later. And then I had a hyperactive thyroid. I had this area here swollen and I was a hyperactive thyroid, which made sense because I was always nervous, anxious, irritable. I had mood swings. I couldn't sleep really well, which I thought was only because I'm in New York City and it's extremely difficult to just live. You don't have time, and at least I didn't, which was not that great of me. I went home after this, and at the time I was already living with my boyfriend in Brooklyn, and I thought about okay, so I'm malnourished. I'm just going to bring more snacks to work, like nuts. But reflecting back now, what I know now, looking back at that experience, I realized that I didn't even have enough intake of food. In general, I did not eat enough, which contributed to my malnourishment. And just to give you a glimpse of what I would eat every day. So for breakfast, I would have half a cup of yogurt, and I would sprinkle 3 or 4 or 5 pecans or walnuts. And I would add maybe half a cup of oats. That was it. For lunch, I had 3 asparagus sticks and a scallop. Maybe a chicken leg. That's it. I mean, keep it simple. For dinner, usually a kale salad, 1 tablespoon of cranberry, 2 wedges of cheese, maybe another walnut. I figured walnut looks like a brain. It's good for brain health. It actually is good for brain health. In between, I would drink coffee, sugar, and milk. And that kind of got me going. But obviously with the amount of physical exercise that I was doing, standing at the hotel front desk for 8 hours a day, plus checking coats for 6 hours, and then walking around this restaurant, handing shots to patrons, it was a lot of physical exertion. And then only sleeping about 5-6 hours. I didn't do this every day. I mainly did this on the weekend. That was really crazy. I had to make a lifestyle change. Finding out this information, malnourishment, which to me felt really strange, especially like I said, when I was working at the UN and I would work on these campaigns to end world hunger. I didn't even hear that word in the Western world, malnourishment. And what I did was I basically quit my shot girl job and I reduced the shifts at the Harvard Club. So I just stuck to one job. I did that for about a few weeks, which was great. But then I realized I need to really look into my habits and how I ate and what I did, because the doctor did tell me to come back in 3 months for a checkup. But there was no plan that we discussed of what you eat. And I told the doctor that I ate healthy, which, and I'm skinny, my mom is skinny, so genetically it makes sense. She's small boned, she eats healthy. But we never really talked about how much I ate, which I think is something that doctors don't really go over. It was brought to my attention when I looked at what I was eating. I thought maybe I wasn't eating enough. And I wasn't really sure what enough was because I wasn't hungry. And what I'm going to talk about in the next episode, some of the fascinating research around people who don't eat a lot of calories and what kind of habits they form and what the reward is like. So please check out the next episode because this research is going to absolutely be fascinating for those people who are restricting calories and how it's such an ingrained habit that we don't even know sometimes that we're doing it. subscribe to my channel. I would really like that. And as always, be the girl that you want to be.